Picture this, my best friends and I, Rich and Bruno at the time, were driving our knackered out white Dodge Caravan down one of these endless roads in northern Arizona. We were about 10 days into a 3-week road trip. You know, one of those really full-on road trips you did when you were younger where you were just desperate to tick every box. You were desperate to take a photograph of every single thing and drink all the cheap booze and liquor that you could possibly get your hands on. Well, this was definitely one of those trips. So we're at the end of this really long day where we'd done another few hundred kilometers and we were desperate to find somewhere to camp. Up until this point in the trip, we'd managed to actually wild camp in most places and avoid campsites. At this point also, we knew that we were really close to a really epic landmark. We didn't know where it was, but we were really close and we really wanted to see it. But we're in a national park and it was going to be absolutely impossible to find somewhere private to camp for that night. So we'd resigned ourselves to camping in a campsite. And I don't just mean a normal campsite, I mean a US campsite. Now, for those uninitiated, the US do campsites the way they do everything else. And for you North Americans watching this, you know exactly what I mean. Now, us Brits, we think we're living up to the max if we've got like a little flappy bit of fabric sticking out the edge of our tent that we can put our shoes in at night to stop them getting wet. But not in the US. The US do things a little bit differently. Everything is huge and everything is really full on. We're talking satellite dishes, we're talking camping seats that came in 3-piece suites, we're talking RVs the size of houses. It was like behind the scenes of a Tarantino movie. So there we are, driving down this long stretch, desperate for somewhere to camp, trying to avoid somewhere like that, but resigned to the fact we may end up somewhere like that. Fast forward about an hour, and eventually we roll up to an RV park, and guess what? It's exactly as we imagined, but the sun wasn't going to be going down in too much time, so we knew we had to pull in somewhere, so we pulled in there. We found our spot, we paid our fee, but then we had a look around and we knew it wasn't quite right. It wasn't what we wanted. We knew that surely the landmark we wanted to see wasn't going to be too far away. We checked the map and we all agreed, yeah, the thing we want to see desperately is surely it can only be a couple hundred meters behind those dense trees over there. But then we looked around and said, well, why has no one else figured that out? Why is everybody else happy to sit in a glorified car park? But we've also been on enough adventures by that point to realise that just because other people weren't doing it doesn't mean we shouldn't. And what was right for them wasn't necessarily right for us. So we split off in 3 separate directions, about a 45-degree arc, trying to find this viewpoint that we were so desperate to see. And about 10 minutes of sweating and snagging myself on thorns later, I'll never forget it. I came up to a clearing, and then all of a sudden there it was. It opened up to this view. And I never forget the words that I shouted at that point. I shouted through the trees to Rich and Bruno, I found it! And what happened, they came hurriedly to join me. They all agreed, and it didn't take us long to decide that that is exactly where we wanted to camp for the night. So we rushed back to the car, we piled out all of our stuff, our tent, our sleeping equipment, our spare clothes, our head torches, our cutlery, food and drink, and of course, a cool box absolutely jam-packed full of ice and beer. And we traipsed back through that same dense forest to the spot where we wanted to camp. Now, I know a lot of you out there realise that there's nothing more cumbersome to carry than an icebox full of beer and ice, but for us, it was totally worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, the view that we slept on the edge of that night was this one. It was, up to that point and to this day, the most spectacular view I have ever seen. We saw an amazing sunset and we got up at 4:30 for the sunrise. But here's the thing, we nearly missed it. We could have slept 200 yards away from something amazing and not even realised it. Something memorable was one decision away from something so average. So what prevented us from missing out on this experience? We trod our own path. It would have been so much easier to look around that campsite, see all of the decisions and actions other people had taken, and limit ourselves to those same actions. But when we do that, we're viewing life through somebody else's lens, and we're preventing us from the things that make us come alive. I truly believe that life should be built on the things that make us light up, that inspire us and energize us. Now, there'll be people watching who believe that's a really selfish approach to life, but in my opinion, that is the definition of a scarcity-based mindset. If I'm having a great time, somebody else is suffering. If I'm winning, somebody else is losing. But the thing is, when we're misaligned, we become frustrated, we become angry, and we can't help anybody. But when we're living our own path, we're energized, we're inspired, we're operating at our best level, that is when we make the greatest impact on the world. So my question to you is this: if you were one bold choice away from stepping closer to your true path, what would that choice be? And what would the impact be on you and those around you?